All right, I'll call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. As a reminder, please silence your cell phones. As we all know, there is a $50 fine to the Wildlife Fund if we catch a phone going off. So keep that in mind while you've got your phones silenced. Roll call, please. Commissioner Bell,
Present.
Commissioner Haskell,
Present.
Commissioner Jolovich,
Here.
Commissioner Mai,
Here.
Commissioner Masterson,
Here.
and Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
All right, we have a full quorum. Members of the public who wish to address the commission on any agenda item, please fill out a comment form located at the registration table and hand it to one of the department staff who will forward it up to the front here. Assisting with the meeting today is Hannah Smith from the Laramie region. So thank you, Hannah, for your assistance there. If you're participating via Zoom, you should have submitted an advance comment form prior to the start of the meeting. If you'd like to still comment on an agenda item, please contact the host of the meeting. As we work through the agenda, the public will have the opportunity to address the commission. So to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to speak and as a courtesy to others, please do limit your time. And commissioners, just as a reminder, you want the red light to be on for your mic to be hot. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Moving forward with the agenda. Did everyone get a chance to look at the commission meeting minutes from the last open session?
Madam President, I have had that opportunity and I would move their approval as submitted.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion about the minutes? All those in favor of approval?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Director Bruce.
Madam President, Commissioners, good to be with you here today. I first want to start my remarks off by introducing and recognizing three department staff. First of all, when we look for leaders within the department, sometimes we find them in unexpected places. I'd like to introduce Roy Weber as our new Chief of the Communication and Education Division. Roy. Roy is a familiar face to you, coming to you from our lands branch chief, often working on property issues in front of you. We put him and challenged him to do an acting position as the chief of comms and education, and he really rose to the occasion. He did toss his name in the hat, and we selected him. So great to have Roy as part of the leadership. Secondly, I'd like to introduce Shannon Jacobek. A new face to you guys, but not with the department. She has many, many years university here at me with our program. This feels like it's going in and out, Wayne, is it? I'm gonna pause a minute. Can I talk closer? I don't know. Okay, we're going to try this. Maybe better? Okay. Sorry about that, Rhiannon. So she is our new Wildlife Policy and Legislative Affairs Manager. Before coming to this position, she was our state wildlife action plan coordinator, helping us to update and rewrite that plan. So definitely a lot of experience already with the department. She will be working closely in the director's office. And we had a position similar to this, but a little bit different. So that position we kept open for a year when I became director. And I really was wondering, what the director's office needed. And so we took a year to evaluate that and retool the position. And how I view it is we have the opportunity to not only respond and try to shape future federal legislation, state legislation, but really with our federal leadership right now to really try to create it, to lead and get out in front. And so Rhiannon's really helping me with that role and working closely with our federal delegation, other states, to hopefully move the needle on some of those critical policies that we work on every day, such as the Endangered Species Act, NEPA, et cetera. So looking forward, and you'll hear more from Rhiannon in future meetings as well. And thirdly, I'd like to really recognize an employee who has spent years dedicated to public service to the state of Wyoming. 37 years with the department and with this office that we're here today as the regional office manager. So Debbie Wheat. Debbie is going to be leaving us in January. So we wish her a well retirement. Great, thank you. Just to give you an update, I think I've updated you on sage grouse and the BLM amendment almost every meeting. We did anticipate ROD or a decision to come out October 31st. It has not come out yet. There could be some delays responsible because of the federal shutdown. We will see, but it should be any day now that we see the final decision to that sage grouse amendment. So what does this mean for the state of Wyoming? Working through the sage grouse implementation team, the CIGIT, we will be working on updating the state's executive order to align with that BLM amendment now. And this is a really critical to have both plans work together in the state to continue the strength that we've seen in the past by those working really simultaneously together. I also want to mention some additional work. Senate File 179 that went through last session, it clarified the opportunity for developers or operators to have operator offered mitigation. Instead of just purchasing credits when they have an impact to sage grouse on the landscape, they would be able to do actions themselves, restoration actions that could directly impact sage grouse where they are doing the development in a positive way. So this is exciting as we move forward. Okay, third try. Office of State Lands and Investments is responsible for this work. We're working closely with them to outline what the future of this will look like. And just to update you, soon in a few days, President Lemval and I will meet with Governor Gordon to go over the commission's recommendation for the designation of the Sublette Antelope Migration Corridor. We'll be having a conversation with him about what you guys discussed at the last commission meeting and see where he wants to take it from there. So please stay tuned. That's progressing. This last September, several of the department attended the Association of Fish and Wildlife Service Agency annual meeting in Arizona. We refer to this as AFWA for short. At that meeting, the new director of the Fish and Wildlife Service, our own Brian Nesvik, charged us to come up with a list of priorities that the states would like to see for the Fish and Wildlife Service to work on during this administration. We are putting lists together and working both with our national association and our Western one through WAFWA on those priorities. Had a good discussion with the new director and his staff to talk through some of those things, and we're looking forward to that close relationship moving forward. And lastly, several of us will be going to the legislative interim committee meeting, Travel, Rec, and Wildlife tomorrow in Casper for their last interim meeting before the session. And we'll continue some discussion on landowner license. There is a bill that we will be testifying on where putting a cap on the amount of landowner license that the commission would have the ability to put that cap on that landowner license issuance. And also a bill regarding the property taxes that the commission pays on commission property. Similar to bill, almost the exact same bill as what we saw last year during the session. We're excited about that testimony. I think Commissioner Bell, who will be there, and maybe a few others of you to participate in that as well. This landowner license conversation continues. It was part of the Joint Ag Legislative Interim Committee meeting last week as well. They proceeded with 2 bills going forward on the topic. One of them was a mere bill for a landowner license cap with some edits that they had during the meeting. And another one was a landowner transferable tag bill, similar to the one you saw last year. Both of them passed through committee, and we will be seeing those during the legislative session. With that, that wraps up my director's remarks. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for Director Bruce? Okay, thank you very much. Deputy Director.
Good morning, Madam President, members of the Commission, Director Bruce. Next on the agenda item, I'm seeking approval for your future commission meetings. I can go through them. They are in your notebook, though. March 18th and 19th in Torrington, April 21st and 22nd in Riverton, July 14th and 15th in Sheridan, September 15th and 16th in Evanston, and November 5th and 6th in Cody. And also your January commission meeting for 2027 proposed is January 6th and 7th. I'll stand for any questions.
Madam President. I noticed there's no Whiskey Mountain, no May meeting, and so I'm just curious on what the conversation on that was.
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner Bell, we've talked in the director's office and we're waiting to see about the sports person forum with the governor's office to see what that location might be. And if that location changes, we've talked about adding a semi, formal retreat on the side of that, depending on the location.
Madam President, to echo that, I think, and I know you know this, I just can't help but say, those retreats, regardless of where they are, I think are incredibly valuable. So I'm glad to hear that it just isn't in here yet. So thank you for that. My question is, the January 6th, 7th of 2027, do we know how that fits into legislative session, inauguration, those kind of dates?
Madam President, Commissioner Masterson, we do, as long as they keep the schedule. And the inauguration is January 4th. So that kind of blends well with that. And then the session, I believe, starts January 12th.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? All right, we've been presented with the dates and locations for commission meetings. Do we have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have a calendar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam President, Director Bruce, members of the commission. All right, there we go. Good morning, Madam President, Director Bruce, members of the commission. And so I'll try and tie into what Director Bruce touched on and give you a little overview of where the legislative update is at. And you'd think that October would be a quiet time. However, you know, this year, our staff spent an incredible amount of time since the September commission meeting working on documents for the Joint Agriculture, State and Public Waters Resource Committee, and then lately preparing some additional follow-up documents for TRW, which as the director mentioned, is this Thursday. So I'm going to touch on just a few key topics. I want to start off with thanking Commissioner Masterson for his testimony recently on the issues at the Joint Ag meeting. And at that meeting recently, we covered landowner licenses limitations, which was on their agenda. That's basically the cap bill. And then the landowner hunting licenses requirements, which is the one that Director Bruce mentioned, which is a transfer bill. And so there was a lot of discussion at this meeting regarding those two bills. And under the draft landowner license limitation bill, which was the cap, the director provided a lot of background to the committee on all the work that has gone into landowner licenses up to this point. As you know, there's a lot of history here between the task force, the commission, and agency history there as well. At the committee meeting, a lot of discussion back and forth on percentages, what a cap may look like. Is it an emergency ability, or is it something that's in place to maintain public opportunity? There was some language changes, suggestions, residency, operating in Wyoming discussions, and assessments on those properties was also discussed, as well as income. In the end, the committee settled on several amendments. And one of those amendments is that language was added to the bill that at no time less than 40% of the game and fish license quota for a given limited quota area shall be issued to landowners. So basically placed a bottom window of what those landowners would be able to get. They also had a discussion about when deemed necessary to maintain that public opportunity, the commission could institute that cap. And so just some clarifying language and some opportunity for the agency to continue to move that forward. And as the director indicated, that bill did move out of committee, and so it passed in committee. During the landowner discussion, landowner hunting license requirements bill, the transfer bill, again, a lot of discussion related to residency, land assessments, revenue. Is there an ability to tie some money back to the landowner coupons? And then they offered some cleanup language as well. There was testimony from several landowners, some of the NGOs, and as well as the ag groups. And in the end, again, they had several amendments that were approved, including adding transferability to the title. So they went through the bill and just added transferability to a lot of the different places in the bill. They added resident to the bill. So basically it precludes non-residents from being able to transfer licenses. So the bill spells out that residency is required. The land has to be assessed as ag property, and they required a minimum agricultural income of $10,000. And then finally, they added a sunset date to that bill of June 2031. And the discussions revolving around that was so that they could reevaluate the language in this bill once that came back around. And again, that bill passed. And so we'll be seeing that down the road as we get closer to the session. As I mentioned, TRW is tomorrow, or tomorrow. And so we got folks going to that. They will also be hearing a bill related to the landowner license cap. And a lot of discussion between the two committees on who's the appropriate home for this bill, but they're both moving forward with it. And our staff will be there tomorrow to provide some additional feedback and some testimony on that bill. As the director mentioned, there is a bill on property tax exemptions that we are providing language, and we're going to seek an exemption to the headquarters, regional offices, regional field offices. So if you're familiar with the Sheridan region, we have a Buffalo office there. And so that's kind of our satellite office in that Sheridan region, provides a huge amount of service to those people so they don't have to drive all the way to Sheridan to get bears checked in or to do things. So we have a staff that works there. We also are looking for an exemption to the National Bighorn Sheep Center and game warden stations. And this bill does not figure in employee housing at fish hatcheries because they're already included in the ag exemption because those properties are, considered those types of properties that we would like to pay the tax on the ag portion of it. And it also does not include the Sibyl Research Facility or the select and our WHMAs. So if, just to give you an example, so that exemption would decrease our taxes about $540,000. We pay about $134,000 in game warden stations. The Bighorn Sheep Center is not that much, but it's $6,000. Buffalo is a small amount too. It's about $1,500. But in the future, if the agency would move forward with something like that in a different community, we'd be able to keep that on the same type of field as not having to pay tax. Headquarters and the regional offices, we're almost at $400,000 in taxes on those. So we have a lot to gain out of this, and so we'll be testifying and seeing where that goes. Tomorrow, we're also monitoring a couple other bills, including the DEQ will be testifying on industrial siting and wildlife mitigation. And this builds on some direction that came out during the last legislative session and a draft bill that was forwarded at that time. There's also a bill up for public comment related to allowing a person to use a leashed blood trailing dog to track and recover wounded black bears. This bill just basically adds black bear into an existing statute, and we're going to kind of see how that goes with the meeting this week. So, and with that, that's just kind of a real quick overview of things. If you have any questions, they'll stand for comments, and a lot of our staff help develop talking points and the documents that will be used. And so we'll be able to, if I can't get an answer to your question, I'm sure the director has good insight on things as well.
Thank you. Any
Madam
questions?
President?
Yes, sir.
I guess I don't kind of know where to start. I find it increasingly frustrating that the legislature is, with two separate bills on the same thing from two separate committees, and that's their prerogative, of course, but I find it very frustrating for the department to have to spend all the resources and all of our time to address both different committees on kind of the same thing. But, and listening to the joint ag, and I don't know where the 40%, the commission has never spoken on any kind of what percentage from my recollection. I don't know if it's pertinent for the department to, is 40% good for the department? Where did this 40%? I know how the 40% came, but I don't know if the department needs to have more of a direction on the percentage of that. So, and then there go again. If it comes in front of TRW, it'll maybe be a different percentage or different things. And I would just caution the legislature, it's tough for the department to have to do this kind of stuff. And I would encourage them to maybe consolidate a little bit more for the citizens of Wyoming. So with that said, that's just my general thoughts and question on the 40%.
Thank you, Madam President and Commissioner Roberts. As you know, there was a lot of discussion that it went all across the board, and there was a lot of confusion on, did it mean that 40% were reserved for residents, or did it mean that the minimum would be 40% for landowners? There's discussion about making it 70% and 30%. And our agency basically stands ready to work with them and provide details on the factual nature of that, but it ultimately will be up to them and their feedback that they're getting. And I'll turn it over to Director Bruce if you have anything additional to add.
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner Roberts, thanks, Doug. Yeah, the commission has not did a formal response or a formal opinion on where they may take a cap on what percentage. There was a lot of conversation during the Wildlife Task Force on that subject. And I will have to say that I agree with you in the confusion part of having two very similar bills, maybe the same bill. It'll be yet to be seen how tomorrow goes. If it if it mirrors the joint ag bill or if it's two separate. And then I imagine with two similar bills, what will happen is once it gets to the Senate and the House floor, that's where it will ultimately be decided on which committee that they will end up in, either joint ag or TRW.
And Madam President, if I could add to that, because both bills are so similar, we're spending time on it, but a lot of it carries over to the other bill. And so we're able to kind of dual team both of the bills at the same time and how we're preparing our talking points and evaluations.
And Madam President, it is a budget session, correct? And so it's going to have a lot different getting onto the floor, isn't it?
Madam President, yeah, thanks for those comments, Commissioner Roberts. And thanks to the department and Commissioner Masterson again for testifying last week at Joint Ag. And if you haven't had 3 or 4 or 5 hours to go back and review that testimony and all how that conversation went, I would recommend it. It's enjoyable to watch. Looking forward to tomorrow's discussion, Casper, on the landowner cap. And I could talk about this for so long. I don't even know where to start. I don't mind the 40%. I don't know that that's the right number. I don't know that there was a right number. At least it gives a number and it solidifies the fact that 60% of licenses, let's just say that something happened and in every limited quota area, landowners decided to at least we know that in limited quota areas, if the commission chooses to do that, to implement that there will be an opportunity for every person to draw a tag, and that's the fair thing. And I think that's a good thing. Like I said, I don't know whether that when you choose which hills to die on, maybe that's not the one. That the 40% it's not terrible language. It's not 70, it's not 80. It means that more than 50%, in fact, 60% would go to sportsmen. And so I think it's a good thing. As far as the transferable landowner tags, a lot of conversation to be had there. I think that having that cap in place is critical if a bill like that is passed, because I think the opportunity for landowners to take advantage of that have never applied for a landowner tag is there, even in general areas, and which would make it more difficult for our non-resident folks to draw those general tags in some of those areas that sometimes 4, 5, 6, 7 years to draw a general tag, and that would make that even more difficult. So it's something to hopefully our sports people are watching that. Thank you.
Madam President, Doug, the two bills that were requested to be drafted, one for TRW and one for ag, did they come out of LSO identical?
And Madam President and Commissioner Mai, yes, and initially they did, but then the amendments, that's where they kind of start to separate.
Right. Thank you.
Madam President, it just petrifies me that listening to and I know it's kind of a mixing pot of things, but just throwing out random top of the head type of things when we're entrusted with wildlife in this state. So it's a scary thought for me that and with everybody and being the sacred wildlife that we would just throw things out there.
Madam President, just for what it's worth, I appreciate Commissioner Bell's comments about the 40%. The sense I got at the meeting was that that was just a figure that was bantered about and decided upon. I don't know if there's any magic to that figure versus 30 versus 50. I think it was just my perception is it was a figure that was landed upon. If I personally had a magic wand, I favor trusting this commission and the department with being good stewards of the wildlife and taking care of landowners. And I wish we had complete flexibility to react to crisis situations like severe winters and make sure that our sportsmen have the opportunities. It's obviously it's not my decision to make. It's not this body's decision to make. At least not right now. The legislature has to give us the parameters and it's their decision to make. I would hope that they would be open to the idea of having faith in the department and the commission and just allow us, as the bill originally came out, which was just allow us to set caps area by area as we deem necessary as part of the regular licensing process. We've expressed that to them and it's, they got more votes than we did. So it's their decision, but I hope they will consider that and have some faith. The transferability of landowner licenses petrifies me because of the consequences that I can see coming from that. If we're if we're selling 3,000 plus landowner licenses right now, if suddenly those become a commercial opportunity for those who have not applied, I don't know how many more applications we will see, how much more pressure we are going to get. And that puts aside a road I won't go down, which is the commercialization of wildlife opportunities in the state. So it petrifies me, to say the least, but that's just me. Thank you for allowing me to editorialize.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, President Lundvall, members of the commission, Director Bruce. I think they're going to get a PowerPoint up and running, but while they're working on that, this is a presentation on our policy updates. This has been a probably almost a year-long process of updating commission policies that many are decades old, and they need a kind of a good look through, which our department has been doing, our different divisions, and we'll bring you those changes. After this presentation, we have a presentation that you briefly saw from our communications divisions on some policy updates. So I am Mark Nelson. I'm the planning chief in the director's office, and I believe your commission packet has the revisions that I'll present for you today. First one, policy 2D ethics. We propose to eliminate this as policies here are reflected in statewide policies. The policy ethics are covered in the executive branch code of ethics. And then as well, our Human Resources Division section covers ethics in our employee orientation. And then for policy 2E, sexual harassment or harassment in general, we've updated some of the sexual harassment sections where we've added language that also is covered under the definition of sexual harassment. Just some added language there. So the human resource section is the appropriate section to review any of these cases. So we've outlined that there with that deletion. And then we've deleted language that stated it was a grievance matter. It's actually a violation of policy, not does not come under a definition of grievance. Policy 2G, acknowledgement and complaint. We propose to eliminate that as there are different policies throughout the state that cover this, covers sexual harassment, dismissals, etc. To eliminate that, we also have a tracking form that's under that policy that we do. We will eliminate that, but we'll use that internally as guidance when we track either complaints or acknowledgements that we receive from the public. And then education and training, we do propose to eliminate that section. That is covered in the state personnel rules for education and training. And then we also review that through job descriptions, division, supervisor approval. So it's really not needed as a policy. Next policy is 3B, temporary personnel. That includes at-will contract people. We do propose to eliminate that. All of that is covered in state personnel rules, and we do a thorough job of working through temporary personnel with their qualifications, with their review, with their assessment internally as well. So given that there's a lot of proposed eliminations, our human resource section has created a nice internal web page where our employees can go here and see all these state personnel rules in one place. They can access it. They can access our policies. So even though they're eliminated because they're duplicated elsewhere, our folks can go to this page and see exactly what the personnel rules say on ethics or harassment or whatever it may be. So it's all in one place for them. So with that, we ask that you vote to approve the revisions as presented or eliminations, and I'll certainly stand if you have any questions.
Any questions at all?
Madam President, first, I appreciate the work that went into this because it's laborious, tedious work, and thank you for doing it. Things need to be overhauled and someone's got to do it. And I appreciate the effort that goes into redoing things like this. So thank you for that. My question doesn't go to any of your changes. I'm totally good with all of them and I'll vote in favor of them. The policy manual itself, is that something that can be available to us, like put in a shared drive or something so that the commission has access to it?
Madam President, Commissioner Masterson, we could certainly make it available on a drive. I believe I'd have to get with our IT folks, but I try to make it a practice after every revision to send out to the group, to you guys, but we can certainly have it in one place for sure.
Madam President, I do receive those and I appreciate them. It'd be just great to have, them in one spot. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, what's the pleasure of the commission?
Madam President, I would move to approve the changes as proposed and presented.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. Slight technical difficulties, but we're back on track now. All right, Chief Weber.
See if we can get this one up this time. There we go. Okay, President Lundvall, members of the commission, Director Bruce. This morning, I'll be presenting 7 communications and education policies for either revision or elimination. In most cases, they're pretty minimal changes to the language just to bring them up to date. But in cases where it diverts significantly from the prior policy, I'll try and show that on these slides so you can see what those changes are. So we'll start off with policy 3C, volunteers. This policy outlines procedures to allow volunteers to help on projects. We elevated the approval of volunteers to use state vehicles to the division chief level instead of project supervisor. There's a little bit of liability and risk associated with having volunteers drive vehicles. So we wanted to have that up to that level just to make sure we're safe there. We require the project supervisor to provide policy information to volunteers, ensure those policies are adhered to. We updated the requirement for volunteers under the age of 18 to have a third person present at all times. That third person must be either a parent or legal guardian or have the consent of the parent or legal guardian to be there. And then we removed the volunteer service agreement from the commission policy completely. We don't believe this is needed in the policy itself, and it allows us the ability to make minor tweaks to that agreement over time if needed. So you'll see that in a couple of these, we removed the agreement completely. Next, we have 3G, ride-along policy. This policy allows for non-employees to ride along with department staff when conducting official business. It requires online enrollment to participate, so that's a change from what was there previously. We added that third person requirement for anyone under the age of 18 that's riding along. Any children in safety restraints cannot participate in a ride-along policy, and then restrict all law enforcement activities, firearm use, or drug and alcohol use. Just kind of no brainer, but we had to put it in the policy just to make sure everybody understands they can't do that.
Roy, I do have a question about that.
Okay.
The third person on the slide previously that has to be involved, can the parents, we've run into this at school with job shadowing and things like that. Does it specifically say that the third person has to be present, or that a parent can sign off on not even having the third person there? Could you clarify that?
President Lundvall, my understanding is that this will be, they need to be present at all times. You want to have 3 people present at all times just for safety.
Okay, and they have to be like in the same vehicle going and
Mhm.
everything.
Correct,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Next, we'll talk about promotional information 6C. This policy restricted promotional materials from private organizations to be included in department mailings and without services division chief approval. We're going to eliminate this policy. You know, in really special cases, we want the ability to place promotional information in mailings if needed. Very, very special cases though for that only. So we're just gonna eliminate this one completely. Next, we'll talk about policy 6E, complimentary subscriptions to Wyoming Wildlife Magazine. This policy allows for complimentary subscriptions to certain individuals and organizations to facilitate free flow of conservation information. We updated this to allow for digital or print subscriptions. So I prior just said print subscriptions only. So we want to do the digital ones also. It also allows for exchanges of subscriptions with other publications with communication education chief approval. That would be if we were to trade Wyoming Wildlife Magazine with their Montana magazine too. The next is 6H, use of Game and Fish Department logos by external organizations or individuals. We updated this to require a written request detailing logos to be used, intended use, frequency and duration to be submitted to the Communications and Education Division for approval. This reports of unauthorized use of department logos are to be reported to the division chief for further investigation. And in some cases that may go to the AG's office for further legal action. We remove the application document from the commission policy also, since that's not needed. Next is policy 6J, social media and social networking. We updated this policy to ensure employees understand that misuse of social media can have substantial impacts to the department. And also, there's no expectation of privacy when using social media on state resources. Any representation as a department employee or representative when using personal accounts is subject to this policy. So if someone has a personal account and says, I work for Game and Fish and I said this, they can be subject to this policy also, and they should know that. And then failure to adhere to social media guidelines may result in disciplinary action. And our last one here is policy 7G, request to observe and document department operations. This is if someone wanted to go out and film our crews working on fencing or feeding elk or something else. So we updated the title to include all department operations, not just photographing wildlife, which is what the previous policy said. This requires approval by the communications and education staff prior to setting that documentation up. Requires denial of activity if it is detrimental to wildlife or the department. And then we just updated the policy language throughout this policy. So pretty minimal changes on that one too. So with that, the department recommends the commission vote to approve the policy revisions and eliminations as presented. And I'll stand for questions if you have any.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Madam President, thank you. Now, personally, and this is, I don't feel comfortable moving forward on this one quite yet. And I say that because the topic has come, you know, where does the commission, the commission giving the authority to the department? And I know this was and this conversations came up before, is like, where do we, how does the commission know? I mean, it was just a topic that we addressed just a little bit ago, as far as I don't feel comfortable moving forward to it. I'd like the commission to look at that a little bit closer with the department, and so the commissions were delegating it out. It had been, I know Commissioner Maya had questioned whether we delegated things out and where we have accountability for them. And I know that we're going to try to put some of that accountability back into the commission. So I don't mind myself. I don't feel like, I think it needs more work with the commission.
Madam President, Commissioner Roberts, which part are you specifically talking about?
Okay, when it, and let's take the, you know, it says we'll work on the commission, and everywhere that's stricken the commission and puts department. I think that commission needs to be more involved in looking at what that entails, not the department. So anywhere that's struck commission and put department in that place, that I don't feel comfortable. I don't know enough about it to say, okay, let's regulate that out to the department. So like volunteers for beginning right there on intent, the striking commission, as the department shall annually review and approve or intent in eligible projects and types, first meetings for the calendar year. I mean, I don't feel comfortable at that, and not saying it won't, it's not well, in a nutshell, I am concerned of the commission's authority and losing the authority of a lot what the commission's designed for, giving it to the department.
President Lundeval and Commissioner Roberts, if I may, that policy for volunteers, we changed that because typically those projects aren't approved directly by the commission. And so we felt like it made more sense to say department there. We can definitely change that back if you don't feel comfortable with that. We don't typically take a project to the commission for approval and then you approve it, then we can have volunteers on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I understand that. And for 90%, but I don't like striking the commission's authority on very much of anything without a lot of thought. I mean, because I know it had been brought up for, I think it was kind of a, I don't know, maybe Commissioner Mai, have you got any thoughts on this?
Madam President, being the new guy, I'm hesitant to wade too deep into this thing, but, and this kind of all goes back to some of the discussions we've had with the AG's office and whatnot, as far as what our role is as a commission. And so I'm trying to learn from the department, and they've been great to work with to help guide on that. And then also, you know, just sort of out of an abundance of caution, I've been trying to read the statutes as they apply to the commission and what our responsibilities are. So to answer Commissioner Roberts, yes, I do have some of those same concerns.
Madam President, so I guess I'd maybe think differently about that. I don't feel like we want to be approving all the volunteer projects. I don't feel like, I mean, I feel like this is keeping us in our lane a little bit better than having us in our processes and meeting once a month have to approve those. I just don't see I don't see that this change in these being an issue. I don't have an issue with it. In fact, I think it's a good change.
Madam President, I don't think, to me, it's absolutely not a question of not having complete faith in the department, because I think we all do. I think it's since this has kind of been percolating, I think it's kind of like we're where the buck stops, and it's appropriate for us, in my view, to delegate many duties to the department, and we do so gladly because we know the quality of the work they do, and we know the quality of the people they are, and we trust them. There's what happens institutionally, though, as you delegate things away and you have a turnover in boards and you have a turnover in employees, is we can become disconnected from what we have delegated. And then we don't know what we don't know. I don't have the same, I don't have any problem with these changes, but what I'm jumping on is Commissioner Roberts' comments about the delegation issue writ large, because when you do read the statutes and our specific responsibilities, you know, I do not want to micromanage, have no interest in micromanaging our director or anybody in the department. But I feel that maybe at some hopefully near future point, we can hash some of this out a little bit, figure out who's doing what, because we do, as a commission, need to know what's going on, and be aware of it while not approving every volunteer person who comes in or every ride along. I don't want to do that. So it's a balancing act, and it comes down to me to not knowing what I don't know. It is not a question of lack of faith or beliefs that the department does excellent work. It's my fiduciary role as a commissioner, and suddenly realizing there's a whole lot out there that has been delegated, appropriately so, but I just don't know what it is. So for whatever that's worth, Madam President.
I have a question, Chief Weber. Just with the example that was brought up, am I correct in reading you're not taking authority away from the commission to approve the projects? You're just saying that this is only for volunteers who work on department-approved projects.
Yes, President
So
Lunville,
it's a
that's,
clarification. It's not a removal of authority.
that's correct. We
Okay.
just read it and it sounded like it was the commission needed to approve every project that could have a volunteer
Sure.
on it. And I just didn't want to come every time and do that.
Right, okay, so it's not, again, it's not a removal of authority, at least in this example.
Mhm.
It's literally just saying it's just for department-approved projects, not anything for the commission.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Just to
Madam
clarify.
President, can I kind of tag into a couple of
Please
things
do,
here
yep.
that the three commissioners have been talking about? Has the AG gone through and reviewed all these proposed changes? Does it get submitted to them first?
President Lunville and Commissioner Mind, no, we have not sent it to them.
And the reason why I ask, Madam President, is because I think what Commissioner Roberts, what Commissioner Masterson, Commissioner Bell, and I, and probably everybody else on this commission are getting at is when those statutes were set up, when everything was established and the commission was established and the duties were established, that's to protect us as a commission, but it's also to protect the department. You know, and appropriately assigned. I'm not saying this individual case is one of those. I'm just saying as a broader discussion, that's kind of what you're hearing here.
And I just think, you know, for verbalizing a lot better than I had on this, I just wondered about the authority of the commission and losing some of that authority. And thanks for putting that better on the record. Thanks.
President Lundvall, commissioners, I believe you're referring to the volunteer policy, page 1. I don't believe it does that. However, maybe we could have the AG office review that particular policy and make sure that it doesn't do that.
My thoughts is, you know, I think that anything that takes the word commission out needs to be in front of the commission for a while before we just take it out.
Madam President, I didn't even know, I mean, I don't know that if you left it like this, that we're not going to change anything anyway, right? We're not approving volunteers. We're not doing that on a daily basis. We're not, anyway, I know we're trying to clean up language, but I understand what Commissioner Roberts is saying. I just don't think we do that anyway. And I don't think that this is saying what maybe we think it is saying. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hate to make this longer than it needs to be too, so.
Other comments from other commissioners? Okay.
Madam President, I'm going to make the motion to approve the revisions and eliminations of the outdated policies presented.
like to second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor in a second. Any further discussion or questions?
Madam President, if I may, I'm going to vote in favor of the motion, but I do think it's presented to us, and given the discussion that we've had here just for a couple minutes, I think maybe there could be a space in a future meeting just to make sure we're all on the same page. That's all I'm aiming for. So with that said, I just wanted to put that placeholder in there. If it's the will of the body, maybe we could have a discussion about that at a future meeting. So clarify all those things.
I think that's something we can absolutely do. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. And if we could go ahead and put something on the agenda for education later, make sure that everyone is on the same page about that. Thank you, Roy.
Good morning, President Lumwell, Commissioners, Director Bruce, Meredith Wood, Chief Financial Officer, presenting agenda item number 7, which is just an update on your FY26 Director's Office contingency budget. Back in March, during the preliminary approval, and then again in July, the Commission approved $200,000 be set aside in the Director's Office contingency fund for this year. We have since had some pretty significant unexpected items come up that has essentially burned through that 200,000. Just to run through those a little bit, at Sabile Wildlife Research Center, there was a major water situation with the well, the pumps, and also some radon mitigation that needed to be done. So we obligated $61,000 out of that 200 for that. We also had some emergency wildlife flights that were needed to remove some sheep. So there were $7,100 earmarked for that project. The Sheridan HVAC system went down, so we did some immediate mitigation so that it was up and running, but then it's doing an overhaul replacement, and there was approximately $60,000 for that. We also have incurred some higher expenditures than originally anticipated for the fishing outfitters and guides meetings and the travel and rental fees associated with those. So we've earmarked $5,700 to supplement Fish Division for those expenses. And then finally, we have the final action in a long, ongoing 20-year audit of our lands acquired with federal funds, PRDJ in particular. There was one last transaction. It was the 10 Sleep parcel. It was disposed of without permission by the department from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And as such, we owe them 75% of the value of that parcel, which is $58,500. So with that, we are currently sitting at a balance of just over $7,800 in the account. And we would like to request the commission authorize an additional $100,000 this fiscal year to basically replenish it for the other unanticipated expenses that may come up. None of which will be spent if none come up, hopefully. But we'd like that flexibility. And I'll stand for questions.
So come again on the one about us getting rid of property and all that jazz.
So many, many decades ago, we would use PRDJ dollars to acquire land, WHMAs primarily. With that comes great responsibility on the department to request permission for any land disposals, modifications, change in use, anything associated with that, providing an SUP, anything requires U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service approval in perpetuity, excuse me, of us owning, you, commission owning that property in conjunction with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Again, quite some time ago, the request was not submitted from the department to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to dispose of or change the use of a piece of one of these properties, which is the 10 Sleep parcel. If I recall correctly, that is one that was annexed by the state to widen the highway. So we had no option. We just didn't notify the service that that was occurring. And therefore we have no documentation that it was approved. Under the federal rules, the 2 CFR 200, it does say that the property shall be paid back at 75% of current market value, which we were able to get around that and have them set the value of the disposal back to the time it occurred. So that was a huge win for us. Or you have to acquire other property with licensed dollars and place a federal nexus on it that has the same wildlife value as the property that was disposed of. Or you have to take currently commission-owned property that does not have any federal nexus and place one on it. And seeing how we have no longer been using federal funds to acquire property for many, many years, due to some of these long-term oversight responsibilities and requirements, we felt it was not in the department's best interest to place federal nexus on more state land, commission-owned land. And therefore, the property itself at the market value at the time it was disposed is a total of 78,000. And because they contribute 75% of the dollars for that, that's the portion we owe them, which is the 58.5.
And what year was the oops?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and I don't know. Sean, do you recall?
I just want to know who to send the thank you
79.
card to.
1979.
And did they catch that or did we catch that?
So what happened is in 2005, there was an audit and all of the states in the entire country have fallen under the same lands reconciliation audit. There was some loss, destruction of documents, and ultimately the states are being audited by the Federal Office of Inspector General. The federal regions are not. And so it became the responsibility of the states nationwide to get this cleaned up.
So we caught it.
We had to identify 100% of the parcels and all and every single activity, and it was a mutual effort between the service and the department to go through 100% of those transactions. This is one of many,
Oh, I'm sure.
all of which the others have been reconciled, and this is the only one that resulted in a payback.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President, just a quick follow-up. Do you have any idea, did the commission dispose of that? Did the department do it? Any idea?
Madam President, Commissioner Masterson, there is actually very little documentation because
Sure.
it was not reported. I believe the annex came in. Essentially, we have some email traffic saying this is what's going to happen, and that is what happened. And we didn't send, honestly, if we had sent an email to the service that said, hey, this is happening on this parcel, we have no choice, we would have got a reply and that would have been sufficient.
Understood. Okay, thank you for that. And help me because I don't have a good financial brain. You're asking for an additional $100,000 to be allocated into the contingency fund. Allocated from where? Where does this $100,000 come from?
Madam President, Commissioner Masterson, it comes from our cash balance, essentially the bank account.
The
It's
bank
sitting in
account.
there. Mhm.
Thank you.
I have more questions on this specific land thing that happened, and we have a different funding mechanism now than we had in the past when this happened, and that, but now we're having to pay that out of, basically game and fish dollars, and I'm not sure that YDOT isn't as much responsible for what happened then. But I don't know that that's the conversation here. I'm just gonna go ahead and approve an additional $100,000 for the
Test 1, 2, test 1, 2.
That was what we were waiting for. All right. Meredith, please continue.
Madam President, if it's okay, I do have to make two slight corrections. This 10 Slate parcel was not the YDOT annex. This was a neighboring encroachment building issue. The YDOT, we did have a parcel that YDOT annexed and incorporated into the highway. We were able to work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on that one, so it had no fiscal impact. And this one was disposed in 75, not 79.
Either way, I wasn't born, so that's.
Me either.
So we can't get the money back from YDOT. That's what you're telling us?
We gave nothing, so they owe nothing.
Okay. Just checking, covering all our bases. All right, any additional questions about this request?
No questions, Madam President. I did make the motion. It was kind of, so I'll make it again just to make sure that,
Just to
I'll make
verify.
the motion to approve an additional $100,000 for the director's contingency fund.
Okay, thank you for that. Now that it's recorded officially, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
President Lundvall, Director Bruce, members of the commission. I'm Brian Parker. I'm the Habitat and Access Branch Chief. We're gonna have two presentations on either side of Mr. Wassein's SHP presentation, seeking approval from the commission to continue grazing on Red Rim Daily, WHMA Wildlife Habitat Management Area that Matt Pollock will present. And then I'll reintroduce Mark Kufad for a separate grazing approval.
Good morning, President Lundvall, Commissioners, Director Bruce. My name is Matt Pollock. I'm here to seek your approval for our grazing plan on Red Rim Daily WHMA. Item number 8 on your agenda. Red Rim Daily WHMA, we acquired it in 1991. It's 26,574 acres in size. It is approximately 10 miles west of the city of Rawlins and just south of Interstate 80. There may be some confusion in that we do have 2 wildlife habitat management areas with the name Red Rim in their title. I'm going to be speaking to you about Red Rim Daily, and which is the northern 2 on the map there. And my colleague Mark Kufad will be speaking to you about Red Rim Grizzly. It's in the checkerboard portion of the state, and of that 26,500 acres, 13,989 is commission-owned lands, 1,280 acres of OSLI, and then the 11,305 acres of BLM owned land make up the remainder. So this is a map of Red Rim Daily. As you can perhaps see, the Union Pacific Railroad bisects the property and leaves a small portion in the north and a much larger allotment in the south. We manage those 2 areas separately for our grazing. Because of the mixed land ownership nature, we manage the WHMA as through an MOU with the BLM, the Saratoga Encampment Rawlins Conservation District, the Little Snake River Conservation District, and the Sweetwater County Conservation District. And we meet periodically with those folks to discuss issues, and I work very closely with those folks. And we manage because of the mixed ownership nature, we manage that area as a wildlife livestock demonstration area. And what we mean by that is it is a wildlife habitat management area, correct? And therefore wildlife needs are paramount. However, what we hope to demonstrate is that while they may not be completely congruent, the needs for wildlife and livestock can get along and not only live and thrive together, but be quite successful together. So our grazing management goals, as I said, we manage the area as a wildlife livestock demonstration area. On our north allotment, we as I said, it's a much smaller piece of ground, 1,300 acres approximately. And we allow grazing for up to 60 days with up to 162 AUMs or animal unit months. On the south pasture, which is the larger portion, we allow for 60 to 90 days worth of grazing for up to 1,712 AUMs. Our habitat management goals for the area are manage habitat for pronghorn antelope, manage habitat for greater sage grouse, and to develop additional water sources for wildlife and livestock. As you're probably aware, water is the limiting factor in our carrying capacity for both wildlife and livestock. And if we can do things to improve conditions for both of those, it's a good thing. When we have grazing or farming leases on commission-owned lands, we typically do not have the lessee pay us directly in cash. We work through what's called an Area Improvement Project Agreement, or an AIPA, in which the lessees do project work, which is incentivizes them because it makes conditions better for them, as well as allowing us to do habitat and or infrastructure improvements to the WHMA. So it works out for everyone's benefit. As part of our grazing monitoring program, we monitor what's happening on the WHMA and off the WHMA to ensure that we're achieving management goals. And what I mean by that, when I talk about off the WHMA, sometimes we have the grazing lessees rest or defer grazing on some of their allotments in which there are important wildlife habitats. And so we not only monitor on the WHMA, but we also monitor off to ensure that we're getting what we're hoping to. We also monitor the range health to ensure that we're attaining our management goals. We do clipping studies. We also do photo points. And based on the information that we gather, as well as climatic conditions, acts of God such as fire, we can adjust our AUMs up or down based on that monitoring. Some of the things that we may have our grazing lessees do includes some wildlife-friendly fencing. Currently, the southern portion of the WHMA
There is very little internal fencing. There is a small shipping pasture in the extreme north end, but for the most part, there's about 25,000 acres that is has a boundary fence, but no internal fencing, which does not allow us to alter seasons of use or that sort of thing. So we may look to that. There's some exciting developments in the world of virtual fencing, which my colleague Mark is going to explore on the Red Rim Grizzly, and I think that could be a game changer for us if that works out. So we'll be looking into that as well. But one of my main goals is also to improve and develop new water sources. So chapter 23, section 4 specifies that for any special use, including long-term grazing, that we come to the commission to seek your approval. And so we are recommending that you approve our 5-year grazing plan. And with that 5-year grazing plan, we have the option to renew for an additional 5 years if everyone is in agreement that the first 5 years has worked out well. And I will stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Commissioner Haskell?
I think by default, Commissioner Haskell has deferred to me. He loves me going first. Thank you for the information. I wanted to just touch on a couple things. You're next to the last slide on habitat enhancements, talked about new water well development with solar pumps and tanks, new fences, those things. Are those things that have taken place and are in place, or are those things that will be taking place under this proposed grazing arrangement?
President Lunball, Commissioner Masterson, other commissioners, that's a great question. Yes, there are currently 8 water wells on the WHMA spread throughout the area. We would like to develop further water sources. Over the years, many of those were windmills that we have converted to solar pumps so that we can get greater flexibility and better efficiency, better reliability.
Follow up, if I understood you correctly, it's the lessee is who would go in and put those wells in. Because I think I heard you say those habitat enhancements are in lieu of cash payments. Did I understand that correct?
President Lunball, Commissioner Masterson, yes, that you are correct. Through our AIPA or Area Improvement Project Agreement, the grazing lessee, working with us and our management team, would do the work to install those in lieu of a cash payment for the grazing rights.
And is it explicit in those plans that, thou shalt install X number of wells on or before blank, or I'm just quick, the elevator version of how do you enforce something like that?
Commissioner Masterson, we meet on a yearly basis and we discuss with them what our plans for the following years. And they may come to us in that year one and say, this is what we would like to do, and it's a big project, and we're going to spend our 5-year payment all in 1 year. Then they would not have to do projects in year 2, 3, 4, and 5. But that's how that would work.
And who is the lessee?
We have 2 lessees in the north pasture. It'd be Sandstone Ranches, and in the southern portion, it is Tom and Savannah Chant.
And is the lease that you bring forward to us today, is it a continuation of existing leases with those people?
Great question, Commissioner Masterson. Partially. We have had a long-term relationship with Sandstone Ranches on the northern portion. The southern portion used to be Dwayne and Travis Rodewald. This year, Mr. and Mrs. Chant had a slightly better application, and so we elected to go with them. However, we have a long-term relationship with them in that they had previously grazed on red rim grizzly.
All right. And just one more, you got a 5-year option after 5 years. At the risk of picking at a scab, does that extension come back to the commission, or is that a decision made by the department, if you know?
I believe we would come back, no.
What the answer is isn't as important as just knowing what the answer is, if you will.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
And as I said, we're not, it gives us the option to do that. We're not bound by any sort of, it's a mutual agreement of our management team and the grazing lessee. The grazing lessee may decide that they don't want to renew, and then we would put it out for bid again. Thank you.
I shouldn't have let Commissioner Masterson go first. He took my questions. Great minds think alike, right? Anyways, thank you for this presentation. I'm really excited about the habitat improvements in the water. I think water's the most critical things that we can have on the landscape. And I'm excited to see these solar wells and the tire tanks. Would these wells just free flow and then spill over into an adjacent pit on the ground downstream?
President Lemval, Commissioner Haskell, that's a great question. Typically, we have multiple, we design it with multiple tanks and then usually some sort of an overflow into a reservoir.
Good.
And from there, if it overflows the reservoir, it would either flow, depending on location, into one of the ephemeral streams, or in some cases, we have them flow out and quasi-irrigate some of the.
Sure, good. No, and I think that's beneficial to all wildlife. I mean, you'll even see waterfowl and probably more of them showing up in addition to everything. So how deep are these wells? I know I'm kind of getting off in the weeds, but I'm fascinated by this kind of stuff. So how deep are these wells generally?
We've got wells that go anywhere from, say, 40 feet to several hundred.
Nice, very good. Thank you.
Madam President, how do we determine, take me through the process, how we determine who gets these grazing rights and how we publish it and how it goes out for bid?
President Lemval, Commissioner Roberts, we work with our partners in the MOU with the BLM and the conservation districts. And the BLM sends out a note, puts out a public notice that the grazing rights are available. And then we develop an application form in which we highlight what things are important to us in their application. And then the potential lessees submit those applications, we review them, make a decision within that management group. And then obviously we come to you for your approval.
But have we, and I guess because I don't come from the livestock profession of any sorts, whatever, but why is it beneficial for the wildlife? Why do we need that partnership with livestock if we could do it ourselves?
Commissioner Roberts, that's a good question. Because of the mixed land ownership, in some respects, we don't have a lot of choice in the matter. However, we do see benefits from the livestock grazing. We get removal of decadent material. We get fertilization through the animal's elimination processes. We get incorporation of seeds through hoof action. So we receive a variety of benefits. And just from a political standpoint, I guess, we receive a lot of benefit, I think, by demonstrating, because throughout the state, private lands provide a lot of habitat for our wildlife. And here's an area where we can celebrate that and show that, hey, we can get along. We may not agree 100%, but we can probably agree 85%. And, you know, that makes us pretty good partners. And so we've been able to demonstrate that livestock and wildlife can get along on the same area, and that there are benefits to both from that relationship.
And thus answering my question, why we call it demonstration area.
Madam President, Matt, I'm looking at this is maybe not directly related to the grazing, but maybe it is. Acquired in 1991. So just like Horse Creek in Wyoming, there's lots of horse creeks in Wyoming. There's a lot of red rims in Wyoming too. Is this the infamous red rim from the 1980s?
President Lemval, Commissioner Mai, yes, it is. Without getting way down into the weeds, yes, the area was purchased by a Texas oilman by the name of Taylor Lawrence. He decided that he was going to graze sheep, installed some sheep tight, very wildlife unfriendly fencing, and yeah, the late 70s, early 80s, we had a tough winter. There was a big wildlife die-off. He was sued by the National Wildlife Federation, and through his legal issues and court order to remove fencing, he ended up declaring bankruptcy, went into, he had borrowed money against his life insurance policy, so the Prudential Life Insurance company obtained ownership, and then we were able to purchase it through them.
Terrific history, Madam President, and it made us 60 Minutes, as I remember back in those days. I'm old enough to remember when that happened. And so when you're looking at that map, to me, that's really informative, because we collectively determined many, many years ago, actually many decades ago, that this is a critical path for those pronghorn in the desert to get through there. And we could not risk another woven wire fence or whatever in that area, or suffer hundreds and hundreds of carcasses in a bad winter along that fence, correct?
President Lemval, Commissioner Mai, you're absolutely correct, yes.
Any other questions or comments? So are we wrapping both of these into one, or are we going to keep it separated? Okay, so with that in mind, what is the pleasure of the commission based on the proposal?
Madam Chair, I'd recommend adopting the department's recommendation.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any other discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you. Now, the other red room.
Tentative, right.
I already did it. Yeah, sorry.
All right, President Lundball, Director Bruce, Commissioners, good morning. I'm Jim Wassine. I'm with Landscape Conservation Initiative through the department. I've also been selected to be the Habitat Technical Advisory Group Chair for this year, and with that came the statewide Habitat Plan revision. So in this presentation, I hope to give you a taste of what the Habitat Plan does for us. And we affectionately call the statewide habitat plan the SHIP. So I will be referring to that, both statewide habitat plan and the SHIP. Again, I want to give you an understanding how the SHIP is used, provide examples of our accomplishments under the SHIP, and then our revision process that we undertook. So our habitat plan guides our biologists and aids in the coordination across the department and our partners. The ship sets the direction for the next 5 years and assists in writing comments, provides a means to rank projects applying for Habitat Trust Fund dollars, and many other functions. Our presence in improving habitats for wildlife are a credit to our many personnel involved and our partners. And there are about 65 people within the department with habitat in their job titles, and they're all recognized as leaders in habitat management. To illustrate how the ship guides our work, I have a number of examples of work done last year, 2024. Starting statewide, we conducted research of mule deer herds across the state, and that information is used by questions. One of the strategies within our statewide habitat plan is to pursue conservation easements and other land stewardship agreements. And the Lands Administration acquired easements and access agreements all around the state. An action within the ship, another action is also to pursue acquisition of water rights for fishery and wildlife conservation. Our team looked at 4 different creeks as potential in-stream flow water rights segments in 2024. And one final statewide example is our fish passage. Sometimes when we can't replace a culvert, we install flexible rubber baffles perpendicular to the flow to decrease water velocity and increase water depth so fish can maneuver up those culverts. And in 2024, we reconnected 49 miles of streams for fish passage throughout the state. And now transitioning over into some of the regional accomplishments. In Casper, approximately 218 acres of conifer were cut and piled, and another 195 acres of